Welcome to the Storyteller's Moon, a place where every tale carries you into a world of passion, mystery, and unforgettable emotion. This story will pull you in, so find a quiet corner, let your heart open, and step into the journey.
The dead can't sleep. When the phone rang at 2:11 a.m., I let it go to voicemail on principle. 2 in the morning is a boundary you keep even if you're unemployed, heartbroken, and up anyway pretending to watch nature ambiance videos while actually staring at your own reflection in the black of the TV. My name is Jordan Price, 34, former sleep tech, accidental expert at failing to sleep myself. Insomnia's a bad roommate. He eats all your hours and never pays rent. The phone rang again. Then a third time, precise as a metronome. I gave up and answered. Jordan? The voice was my aunt's. Aunt Bern if you love her. Bernadette if you owe her money. She works nights at Holloway & Sons Funeral Home in Fulton Park. Which is funny because Mr. Holloway has only one son and he moved to Tampa to sell jet skis. Auntie, you good? I lowered the TV volume to leaves whispering to each other about gossip. You still got that voice, she said. What voice? That soothing one. The one you used to talk folks into sleep at the clinic. Can you bring it to me now? Aunt Bern never asked for help. Even when she did ask, it sounded like she'd already accomplished whatever she asked you to do. I sat up. What's wrong? There was a pause where I could hear the fluorescent lights on her end working too hard. The dead can't sleep tonight, she said. And when they can't sleep, nobody can. You mean... I stopped before I said ghosts out loud like a child. You got your keys, she said instead. Bring a thermos. Bring that doctor voice. Bring those little counting tricks. And Jordan, hurry. I put on jeans that remembered my better days and sneakers that remembered my worse. On the kitchen counter, my name tag from the clinic caught the light. Jordan P. RPSGT, registered polysomnographic technologist. I turned it face down like a photograph of somebody who'd left. Outside, the night felt over-caffeinated, humming, a little sharp. Fulton Park was the kind of neighborhood where the trees leaned like aunties listening on stoops, and the streetlights blinked. Slow, as if thinking their own thoughts. I walked because walking helps my brain stay behind my eyes. The funeral home rose out of the block like a ship run aground. White columns, a wraparound porch, and a neon sign in the window that said, "Open" in letters that felt like a dare. Aunt Bern met me at the side door with a look that could quiet a choir. I told you to hurry, she said, pulling me in by the wrist like I was still 8. Come hear this. Hear what? She didn't answer, just led me down the corridor lined with sepia portraits of Holloways, who probably never smiled on purpose. The air smelled like lemon oil, and the silence you only find in places where the living agree to whisper. Down a flight of stairs, through a door marked Prep, and into a low room where stainless steel gleamed and a single radio hissed static. The radio wasn't the sound, though. The sound came from the drawers. You know those morgue drawers you see in TV dramas, all chrome and handle like oversized filing cabinets? They were lined along one wall, 9 across, 3 high. From behind certain doors, I heard it. A restless, papery noise like sheets rubbing together. Not scraping, not scratching, turning. Tell me you put a fan on, I said, though I knew. I cut the air to listen, she said. Been starting since midnight. At first I thought it was the compressor stuttering. Then I thought rats. Then I remembered this building don't belong to rats. I stared at the center drawer, second row, where the handle twitched just once, the tiniest shiver, as if metal could wince. Who's in there? I asked. Mr. Caleb Vance, she said. 59, third shift custodian at the high school. Hart said no more on Tuesday. Nice man. Loved gospel. Always brought me boiled peanuts from the corner when he walked by. And he's turning? They all are, she said softly. And with that she let go of the calm like a woman putting down a heavy bag. Not just here. I got a text from Marla over at Easton Mortuary. Said her quiet ain't quiet either. I called Pastor Dawn. She said her phone been ringing with folks saying their houses feel awake. Like the fridge is holding its breath. Like the bed got opinions. Is there a storm? I asked, as if weather could explain a dead man needing to turn in his drawer. We listened. Drawer 5, Mr. Vance, shifted again. Drawer 7, top row, offered a series of faint thumps, like fingers trying to tap a lullaby backwards. The radio static swelled and shaped itself into almost voices, then fell apart. The dead can't sleep, Aunt Byrne repeated. When they don't, they move. And when they move, they remember being tired. And when they remember being tired, they ask for what they want. What do they want? She looked at me in that way she had when I'd failed curfew. Same thing you want, nephew, she said. To be held in a night that forgives them. She pointed to a rolling stool. Go on. Give them a story. You always were good with stories. And don't do that thing where you joke too much. I don't... She raised one eyebrow. I shut my mouth. The air clicked. Somewhere upstairs, a door eased itself closed, polite as a librarian. I pulled the stool to the center of the room, the way I used to set up by the patient's bed in the lab. I told myself, you did this for years. Sleep is a bridge. You know the planks. I breathed low and long until my own heart stopped sounding like sneakers on a gym floor. Hi, I said, softly enough to be disrespectful of the walls. My name is Jordan. I helped a lot of people sleep when they thought sleep forgot them. The radio hiss gentled. A voice rose out of it, my own, but delayed a half second, like the night was a bad call. I ignored it. If you're restless, I said, it might be because this building feels strange to you. The sheet is wrong. The light is wrong. The clock is not a clock. But you're still you. And you got permission to rest. Drawer 5 trembled once more, then went quiet. Something like a sigh moved through the room. It was the kind of sound that makes you realize quiet isn't one thing. It's a species with cousins. I began counting breaths aloud, low and steady. In, 2, 3. Hold, 2. Out, 2, 3, 4. I pictured my patients, third-shift welders, nurses with shoulders like boulders, grad students whose eyes had learned math the hard way. They had all needed someone to believe that sleep wasn't a punishment. This is the part, I said to the drawers, where I say something kind and corny. You can roll your eyes. Nobody will write you up. From the far left drawer, bottom row, a tap responded. I felt stupidly grateful. I told them a story I used to save for the hard cases, the one about my mother humming over the kitchen sink at 4 a.m., making cocoa and calling it medicine because it made my ribs warm. My mother's gone now, but in the telling I put her right where she lived, at the edge of the day, adjusting the world so it fit. I reached for humor once, out of habit. I know this isn't the Ritz, the turn-down service is minimal, and heard my aunt inhale sharply, warning me. The air itself seemed to say, careful. So I left the joke there. Okay, one more. I did also think, if any of y'all snore, that's between you and your drawer. But I kept it in my head where it belonged. When I finished the breath counts, the room felt like a pond right after the breeze decides it's said enough. Still. Fine. I looked at Aunt Byrne. She nodded without smiling. Okay, she said. Round one. Round one, I asked. You thought it was just here? She said. Child, come upstairs. The front office was lit like a shop window in December. The phone blinked like a tiny lighthouse. 3 lines held, 4 missed calls. Out in the parlor, a man in a suit sat on the settee like it was trying to knock him off. He had the heavy tiredness of a person who hadn't slept because grief kept climbing in his lap. Mr. Darrell Pierce, Afferge, that was his name, I remembered from previous nights, when I'd picked up Aunt Byrne after late shifts. Mr. Pierce's mother is in 7, Aunt murmured, meaning one of the drawers. He said he can't rest with her restless. He came to sit with the building, that kind of man. As if summoned by politeness, Mr. Pierce stood, buttoned his jacket that didn't need buttoning, and shook my hand like his permission mattered. You the nephew, he said, and I said yes. Thank you, he added. For what? I asked. For whatever you're doing to make it quieter, he said. It feels like the house exhaled. I nodded because he needed me to be competent. We're trying something, I said. If you want to rest in the chapel, it's calmer now. He looked relieved and suspicious at the same time. I'll try. Before he left, he said, she always slept with the TV on low. Game shows. Thought the laughter kept nightmares confused. He smiled, a cracked thing. I could never tell her those folks weren't in our living room. I'll turn something on in the prep room, Aunt said, already moving. As she disappeared, the door chimed. Not one person, 6, then 8, then more. Like the midnight train let off in our vestibule. Neighbors, a nurse still in scrubs, a teenager with wide eyes, and the kind of hoodie that looked like a portable wall. Pastor Dawn, hair wrapped, looking like Dawn really had asked her permission. Behind them, a woman I recognized as Miss Thelma from the bodega, and Andre from the car wash, and Keisha, who delivers packages with the speed of a rumor. They didn't speak at first. They just listened to the room. You could feel it, the way people check the weather in church by looking at each other's shoulders. It's everywhere, Pastor said quietly to me. Hospice called me twice. Folks hearing their grandmamas rustling. Babies crying in dreams and then laughing like they just remembered something funny from before they were born. And she hesitated, then went on. My husband. You know he sleeps like a log. He sat bolt upright at 1, said, Dawn, did you hear that? Somebody's counting footsteps outside the door. Then he said, don't open it, whatever you do. It's tired of being tired. Then he fell back out like a possum. Doesn't remember a thing. What do you think it is? I asked. I didn't mean ghosts or science. I meant meaning. Pastor Don looked at me like a teacher who likes you and is about to assign homework anyway. I think everything has a cycle, she said. Tides, seasons, bills, grief. Maybe sleep debt too. Maybe when enough of us forget how to rest, on purpose, with reverence. The ones who already crossed over come back to show us what it costs. That's a horrifying lesson plan, I said. She almost smiled. It's the only curriculum some folks pay attention to. Behind her, Miss Thelma fanned herself and said, Little Ezra woke up shouting about the counter. Everyone turned to her. The counter, I echoed. That's what he called it, she said. Said the counter stands at the end of the hallway and counts with his thumb. 1, 2, 3. Then he looks at you like, you next. Ezra told him no and hid under the bed. Child got sense. The hoodie kid spoke up, voice cracking like it needed oil. My cousin Nia texted me, don't fall asleep around mirrors with a skull emoji 5 times. Then she added, if you see yourself blinking off beat, don't blink back. We all stood there with our metaphors and fear. And behind it, the sound, just at the edge of hearing, of the building settling in for another round of not settling. I said, okay. It surprised me how steady my voice came out. We handle this like a lab. We keep the room low and slow. We breathe. We keep each other company. We try things. If they don't work, we don't give them power by narrating them too loud. Look at you running group therapy for ghosts, Keisha said. You got forms? Copays? First session free, I said. She snorted. That's how they get you. We moved like a small, weird orchestra. Aunt turned a TV on in the prep room, low volume, reruns of a game show where everyone clapped like hope was a wheel you could spin. Pastor organized chairs in a loose circle in the parlor, far from the drawers, but close enough that presence mattered. Andre made coffee so strong it apologized later, and he handed me a cup like an oath. The radio calmed to a hiss with intention. The drawers, most of them, stilled. A few persisted, like legs that twitch until dawn even when the brain begs peace. Then the chapel bell in the back, an actual bell used for services, rang once. No wind, no hand. A single, precise ding like a sentence ending itself. Everyone looked at me. I looked at the hall that led to the chapel. Stay, I told them, like they were dogs, and I was a liar. I'll check. I'm coming, said a voice at my elbow. I turned. A woman I hadn't noticed yet stood beside me. Tall, hair in braids pulled back, eyes that looked like they knew both the spreadsheet and the shadow behind it. She wore an oversized sweater with "How you gon' win if you ain't right within" in cracked white letters. Tiana Cole, she said, offering a hand. I'm a sleep-deprived paralegal with boundary issues. Let's go. Nice to meet you, Miss Cole, I said. I'm only brave when other people are watching. That's my whole personality, she said. And for a second, I liked the way humor could put furniture in a room. We walked the hall. The chapel door stood slightly ajar, as if the building had licked its finger to test the wind. I pushed it open. The chapel looked the same as always. Soft carpet, stained glass morning, even at night. Floral arrangements in tasteful vases that refused to admit they're fake. In the front pew sat a man with a posture that made you want to apologize. Late 30s, salt in the beard, hands clasped so tight it looked like he was trying to hold a bird that might fly out of his chest. He wore a letterman jacket that didn't fit the decade and a grief that fit too well. I recognized him after a beat. Coach Eli Ransom, legendary at the high school for turning boys who didn't believe in themselves into men who sometimes did. "Coach," I said, surprised. "You okay?" He didn't look away from the altar. "He can't settle," he said. "Who?" He swallowed. "My father. Ezekiel Ransom. He's here. Has been 3 days. The room doesn't like it. None of the rooms like it." I sat opposite him, just out of reach, like you do with skittish animals in mourning. Tiana perched behind us, sentry quiet. "What did he do when he was alive?" I asked. "He drove a city bus," Coach said. "Slept like a dock worker, hard and quick. Said sleep is the only time work stops asking for receipts." He laughed once, a bark that dissolved. He always said there were only 3 kinds of people: sleepers, dreamers, and folks who wish. He raised me to be all 3. I've been only the last for a year. The bell chimed again. Not the big bell. A smaller sound, from the side room where the choir keeps robes. Tiana and I traded a look. I stood, moved to the door, and opened it onto darkness dense as bread. The string for the overhead light brushed my knuckles like a spider that's learned intimacy. I pulled. Robe after robe hung in dignified yellow. On the top shelf, hymnals. On the floor, a single pair of dress shoes, side by side. Between the shoes, a smear of something that wasn't dust. Not quite dirt, not quite ash. The footprint of movement, if movement had weight and memory and no right. "We going to pretend that's normal?" Tiana whispered. I looked closer. The smear curved in a half moon, like someone had turned on their heel and thought better of the door. "I need to go in the prep room," I said. "Why?" Coach asked. "To ask a question I don't want the answer to," I said. Back downstairs, the drawers had mostly settled. The game show's studio audience clapped and clapped. Aunt Byrne stood with her hand on drawer 7, eyes closed, lips moving without sound. When she saw me, she nodded toward a clipboard near the sink. "Pull the tags," she said. "Read me who's here tonight." I did, calling the names into the air like roll call. Ezekiel Ransom on the 3rd line. I felt something inside me go warm and cold at once. The sensation of a room checking to see if it's still yours. "Every one of them?" I asked. "All of them restless?" "Not all," she said. "Some sleep the sleep I pray for, but enough to make the building think it's storm season." "Did anyone come in with a condition?" I paused. "Like with their own sleep trouble?" She thought. Mrs. Velez snored like a tractor. But that's not the same. "Mr. Ransom." She frowned. "Slept like a soldier. Except last time he was in here, years ago for a funeral, he sat in the pew and tapped his thumb against his knee the entire service, like he was counting. I remember because it was as if he was keeping the whole room on beat." "The counter?" I murmured. "Nothing." I glanced at the radio. The static had a new texture like wind in tall grass. If you leaned in, it almost made words. In, out, count with me." I stepped away. "Say the rest of your question," Aunt said, not looking up. I took a breath. "Has anyone ever told you, not you, but any director here, that if the dead can't sleep, they leave?" She finally met my eyes. "You mean walk?" I mean walk. She pressed her lips together until the thought didn't leak. I've worked this building 28 years, she said. I've seen lights bow, doors nod, flowers lean toward the ones who need smelling. Once, during a storm, I heard someone upstairs laugh at something funny that happened downstairs. But leave? No, baby. That's not how it works. What if it is tonight? Then we have a responsibility, she said, to stop them. To tell them what we tell the living, she said, and a kind of iron moved into her voice. Where are you going? You can't go alone. It wasn't a threat. It was a rule. I don't know why I did it exactly. Maybe because fear needs a task. I pulled the stool closer to the drawers and set my phone to record, not to post anywhere. I'm not that kind of person. Though I have watched those kinds of videos at 2 a.m. pretending I'm above them. I wanted a record in case my morning brain accused my night brain of writing fiction. I began again. In 4, I said. Out 5. Shoulders drop. Teeth unclench. We're going to move through your body like a house whose lights we turn off one by one. Tiana slipped inside and leaned against the counter like she'd made a choice to be on my team before I asked. You're good at this, she said, so low even the drawers might not hear. Practice, I said. And also, I am not sleeping anyway. You know what my grandma used to say? She murmured. Sleep is just love with your eyes closed. Her voice hitched. She was the one who... The radio cut her off by resolving into a voice neither of ours. A man's, rough and measured. 1, 2, 3. The syllables like a thumb slapping a knee. 1, 2. Mr. Ransom? I asked the room. The radio breathed. Don't open the door. What door? Tiana asked. The one that thinks it belongs to you. Behind us, the prep room door, the heavy swinging one, eased a fraction. The fluorescent light buzzed a note higher. A drawer handle ticked like a clock with a bad conscience. Jordan, Aunt said, don't let your face do that thing. What thing? The thing where your eyes try to run without you. I laughed once, because sometimes fear makes you tell the smallest joke like a prayer. I'm fine, I said. I wasn't fine. I was pieces hoping for a rubber band. The radio breathed again. He's walking. The voice wasn't Mr. Ransom now. Higher, a woman. Maybe Mrs. Velez. He's walking. He thinks he can count his way out. Don't let him get to the stairs. Coach's father? I asked. The radio hissed like it regretted telling. I stood so fast the stool tipped. Stay here, I told my aunt and Tiana. You wish, Tiana said, already beside me. We reached the corridor as the temperature changed. Colder, not like a draft, but like a decision. The hall to the chapel sharpened, corners crisp as folded paper. At the far end, the double doors, one already a little open, shifted wider like an eye thinking about waking. And there, halfway down, a shape. Not a shadow. Shadows flatter like regret. This had mass, a suggestion of a man wearing air like a coat. He walked unevenly, not because of injury, but because he was counting his steps and refusing to compromise with space. Mr. Ransom? I called gently, like you talk to someone on a ledge by pretending you're just discussing recipes. The shape paused. I could feel him decide whether my voice mattered. You don't want the stairs, I said. They loop. He huffed. It wasn't disdain exactly. It was memory of disdain. Then he kept walking. Tiana took my wrist. What does the loop do? It lets you believe there's a door if you just go down one more flight, I said. It's a trick. For the living, maybe for the dead too. I walked forward until I stood at the place where the air was most him. Mr. Ransom, I said, your son is here. He stopped. Not just his feet. The count stopped. A held number in the throat of the night. He's in the chapel, I said. He's been sitting with the room, so it doesn't have to be alone. You raised him all the way out to his edges. Don't leave him standing at the door of your last lesson with nobody to hand it to. The shape turned, slow, like a big man making small choices. We faced each other. He was not visible. You could not have photographed him. But if I had thrown a ball, he would have caught it. Sleep, I said. I think you forgot how to start. That happens on both sides. Tiana stepped up, voice soft in the way a lullaby wears wool. Coach said you were a bus driver. You know routes, you know stops. Let this be one. If it's not yours, it'll come around again. It always does. He breathed in the way a room does when a window opens. Then out. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. The air around him smoothed, like someone ironing a shirt right on your skin. The chapel doors eased closed, an inch, then another. Somewhere in the building, a drawer side closed, gentler than before. Thank you, I whispered to nobody, and also to the exact person who needed it. Behind us, the stairwell door clicked, as if disappointed. I didn't turn. I've made that mistake in dreams and in life. Back in the parlor, the neighbors had organized themselves into a waiting room for a miracle. Pastor passed out water like communion. The hoodie kid slept with his face on his folded arms, mouth open, a drool thread connecting him to the table as if he were tethered to the world by one spit line. I did not mention this. I am not rude. Report, Aunt said. Mostly handled, I said, which is the same thing men always say when everything is not handled. We might need to keep the game show on. And did Mr. Ransom ever count? Like with his thumb? Everywhere, Coach said from the doorway. On the steering wheel. On the pew. When he was happy, he tapped 6 times like it was nobody's business. When he was nervous, 7. What's 7 for? I asked. Starting over, he said. I nodded. He did that tonight. I didn't add that the night had tapped back. The phone rang. Byrne answered, listened, and then looked at me with a face that said, I will not panic. Please panic on my behalf. That was Marla, she said. Easton Mortuary. Theirs started singing. Singing? Tiana asked, eyes widening. Not a song, Byrne said. A tone, like a tuning fork in a throat. High or low? I asked before I could stop myself. Because this is how you trap yourself into believing your expertise applies to the part where a drawer hums a note. Low, Byrne said. Like an engine turned holy. Pastor closed her eyes as if scanning a scripture nobody else had. When the dead sing, it's because the living forgot the words, she said. We need to hum for them. I am not a hummer. I mouthed my way through Happy Birthday at my own birthday. But something about the way the room leaned toward that suggestion made me agree. Okay, I said. But before that, everybody breathe. In through the nose. out like you're blowing on a candle you don't want to kill. We did, a ragged choir. Andre raised a hand. Can I ask a dumb question? No such thing tonight, I said. What if we just leave, he said. Go home. Lock our doors. Pretend the building is a TV show we turned off. You can, I said. But the dead live in more than buildings. They live in our arteries. They live in the corners of the room where you set down the thing you didn't want to think about. You can leave this address, but not your own. And if the dead can't sleep, the part of you that belongs to them won't either. He nodded, looking both resigned and grateful he'd asked. We tried the hum. It was awkward. Like a first date where both of you brought your parents. But then Pastor found a note on the edge of the air you didn't have to search for, and Tiana matched it in a lower octave. And I found the thin little line I'm capable of and laid it on top like a ribbon. The room's corners rounded. The radio softened into something that almost smiled. And then the chapel bell rang again. 3 times in quick succession, urgent like a baby who just figured out language as a weapon. We moved together without talking. In the hall, the air sharpened once more, and I heard it. Footsteps, hesitant and too even, coming down the back stair. 1, 2, 3. A pause. 1, 2, 3, 4. The counter had found a staircase he liked. Don't open it, Coach said behind me, voice shaking for the first time all night. I realized he wasn't speaking to me. He was remembering something his father had said, and a boy he used to be nodded from the past. The knob turned once. Slow. Then stopped, as if the hand on the other side had fallen asleep, mid-grip. This is where I say something distracting, I whispered. Like, if you can afford to haunt me, you can afford rent. Jordan, Aunt warned, don't do it. Right, I said. My bad. Okay, last joke. My brain did also whisper, somebody tell him we don't open for DoorDash after midnight. But I locked it away. We stood there listening to the almost of a man on the other side, deciding whether to insist. After a long 20 seconds, the knob released itself gently, like it regretted asking. Back to the prep room, I said. And, nobody go alone anywhere with a mirror. Why not? Andre asked. Because a kid named Ezra said so, I said. And Ezra has sense. It was after 4 when Fulton Park outside remembered it had birds. The inverse dawn, when the night starts making morning noises without owning the light yet, fell on the windows like a promise that negotiates. Folks in the parlor drifted into those half-sleeps you nap into at hair salons and bus stations. The drawers, blessedly, didn't argue much. I went to the bathroom to wash my face and met my own eyes in the mirror with a defensive suspicion of a man who had cried exactly once between midnight and 2, and intends to schedule the next one for never. I splashed water. The faucet coughed politely. I looked up and met my gaze again, and my reflection blinked offbeat. Not a blink, a wink where it shouldn't be. Left eye slow, right eye early. My real eyes did their own honest thing, while the mirror decided to improvise. I froze. Somewhere far away, a toilet ran. I reminded myself, brain under stress misreads patterns. Faces in mirrors are made to lie. That's why makeup works. I lifted my right hand. My reflection lifted its left a beat late. Then, while my hand was still in the air. She looked back at me from behind my own face. Not me at all. A woman in a low bun, cheeks shaded with a grief I did not own. The air behind the glass seemed thicker, as if someone had painted density onto it. She opened her mouth, and behind the bad acoustics of the mirror I heard, "Don't let him count past 7. "Who?" I whispered to my own raised hand. Her face changed, layers flipping like slides in an old projector. An old man with river eyes, a child with a lip curled in defiance, a nurse I might have seen at the clinic, a young woman with a scar on her chin. Each of them blinked wrong, each of them mouthed the same sentence. "Don't let him count past 7. On the last, the glass fogged from the inside, and 3 digits wrote themselves there. 313. Then the fog cleared. "You good?" Tiana's voice behind me in the doorway. "I think so," I said, which was halfway to treason. She looked at my face, then at the mirror. "I saw her too," she said, matter of fact as a grocery list. I didn't want to say and make it real. "It's real whether or not we narrate it," I said. "But thank you for testing the theory." She grinned, quick and crooked. "Anytime." We went back to the prep room together, not touching because touching made things true in a way we weren't ready for. In the prep room, Pastor held drawer 7 like she was about to wrestle it. And Aunt stood behind her, one hand at the small of the pastor's back, the way you support someone you'd fight and die for. "He's tapping again," Pastor said. "That's 7 you mentioned?" "He keeps getting there. He doesn't know what to do with it." "What happens at 8? I asked. Aunt said, "You leave." "Leave where?" I said, helpless. "To whatever you didn't finish," she said. "That can be a place or a person, or a time." My stomach did 3 small somersaults. I didn't want to be haunted by someone else's homework. I sat on the stool and told the room a story about the first time I fell asleep in a church. I was 9. My mother let me lie down with my head on her lap, and I woke up with the preacher shouting, "Rest," like a commandment, and thought he was cheering for me. The room warmed. The radio smiled its static smile. "Mr. Ransom," I said directly to the drawer that had his name on a tag clipped to the shelf. "Sir, 7 means start over, Coach says. So let's do that. 1, 2, 3. And then, sir, just because you can count a thing doesn't mean you have to." The tapping slowed. 1, a beat like a nap. 2, a pause with texture. 3, a hum, low. And then nothing. Not silence. Rest. I didn't realize I was shaking until Tiana's hand was around my wrist, steadying the air. I let her. "You got him through," she said. "I don't think it was me," I said. "I think he recognized the way a room sounds when a boy needs a father to go to sleep first." She squeezed my hand once, then let go like it never happened. "Whatever it was, keep doing it." By 5, the street outside had the blue that lies and says, "You'll be fine." The neighbors drifted home to catch 2 hours of something that ate at rest without being it. The hoodie kid woke, looked around like a deer appointed mayor by accident, and left with a wave that was 90% gratitude and 10% "I will never speak of this." Byrne made us eggs in the break room on a hot plate she swore wasn't a violation. "Protein chases nightmares," she said. "Carbs hold the coat. While we ate, my phone vibrated with 3 messages. One from an unknown number with a photo. Easton Mortuary's prep room, hymnals stacked like a barricade. Caption, "They're humming low now." We put the radio inside a cabinet. It helps. One from Aliyah. Yes, the same Aliyah who sometimes records with me for my little channel when I feel brave enough to read. It said, "You awake?" I typed yes, and backspaced always. One from the city alert system. Expect delays due to power irregularities in Midtown. Irregularities felt like a polite way to say the grid is tired of you. "We going to nap?" Tiana asked, rinsing her plate. "If we close our eyes now," I said, "the universe will prank us." She laughed, short. "I'm from a family where naps are a competitive sport. We can do 10 minutes sitting up on a tile floor and feel like we're in a Marriott." Then she sobered. "But I don't want to miss this." "You say that like it's beautiful," I said. She thought. "Not beautiful," she said. "True?" Which is meaner than beautiful, but steadier. We went back out to the parlor. Coach had fallen asleep in the chapel, head tilted, mouth open in a small, honest circle. Pastor draped a shawl over him with a tenderness that made my arms ache. I stood at the door to the prep room and listened. I heard a world not ending exactly, more like a world learning to stretch. Drawers still. Radio almost a whisper, the building's spine less stiff. I let myself think we did it and immediately regretted it. Because if horror movies taught me anything, it's that we did it is when the door behind you makes a new kind of sound. The door behind us made a new kind of sound. It was a knock with elbows, not at the front, at the side door, the one the hearse backs up to, the one with the sign that says "Staff only like the dead can read." 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. I could feel the rhythm in my teeth. "We're closed," Aunt called, because manners apply even to invisible callers. 3 knocks, again. The pause stretched, then broke like a voice cracking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. "Don't let him count past 7, I said without breath. "How?" Tiana whispered. "Talk," I said. "Say something that interrupts the rhythm without disrespecting it." She swallowed. Then, softly but with courtroom authority, "Mr. Ransom, Coach fell asleep. Do not embarrass your son by making a scene after he finally closed his eyes." The 8th knock stopped. The silence after it was a decision. I walked to the side door, set my palm against the wood. Not to open, but to let whatever pressed against the other side know a body stood here with intention. "I will open this at dawn," I said. "If you still need me then." The door breathed back. I don't know how else to put it. You can feel breath through an old door. The panels act like lungs. This breath said, fine in a way that carried love and annoyance and a long marriage's worth of understanding. We waited. Dawn moved over the stained glass in the chapel like a thought finishing itself. The radio relaxed its jaw. The drawers forgot they had bodies inside. The side door cooled under my palm the way a fevered forehead does when the medicine takes. At 6, the building sighed the sigh every night worker knows. The one that says, "We put it off one more time." "Go home," Aunt said to everyone, which was just me and Tiana and Pastor at that point. "Come back if your house fights you." Pastor kissed her cheek. "You did good," she said. To me, "You too." Don't get cute about your gift. Use it on purpose. Tiana pulled her sweater closed with both fists. You going to sleep? She asked me. Historically, I said. No. Come sit on my stoop, she said. We'll drink coffee and pretend tired is a hobby. I surprised myself by saying yes. Tiana's building sat 5 blocks over on a street with trees that gossip. We watched the morning do its cheap magic, turn everything the color of forgiveness for exactly 20 minutes. You ever think sleep is a kind of church? She asked, handing me a mug that could file a police report for strong coffee. How so? You walk in and surrender, she said. You're held. You say, I can't keep myself safe for a while, so I'm trusting y'all. And if somebody snores, you try to be charitable. I snorted. I don't know. Church has too many ushers. Sleep let anybody in. She grinned. Maybe that's why the dead came back last night. To usher. We sat in companionable silence until a man with a dog walked by, and the dog looked at us with the full weight of canine judgment. The man raised a hand. Morning, he said. Then, quieter, like the city had ears. Y'all hear that music last night? What music? Tiana asked. Like a low horn, he said. Like a ship saying I'm here to other ships. We heard versions, I said. He nodded, satisfied that his reality had neighbors. My Nana used to say if the dead can't sleep, check the clocks. Like the time? I asked. Like the things we measure time with, he said. She'd walk around the house and stop anything that ticked wrong. Don't confuse them, she'd say. They already confused. He tipped an imaginary hat and moved on. We looked at each other. The coffee hurt good. I should go home, I said. Shower, maybe lie down. You can use my shower, she said, then blushed. That came out like a different sentence. I laughed, grateful for a moment my body recognized as daylight. You're kind. I'll be all right. I wasn't, not really. At home, my apartment felt like someone had taken the furniture and left the shapes. I stood in the doorway and realized I didn't want to be alone with my mirrors. I took a quick shower without looking up, brushed my teeth while staring at the faucet like it was telling secrets, and stretched out on the couch with a blanket my mother sewed for me the year she knew she was dying. I put it to my chin and whispered, "Okay, Ma," and let the blanket be permission. I slept for 43 minutes, according to my phone later. In that sleep, I dreamt a hallway whose doors all led to the same room, the prep room, but emptied of drawers. In the center stood a bed made of light, and on it lay every person I had ever failed to help fall asleep. They didn't accuse me. They just watched. At the foot of the bed, a metronome ticked. 1, 2, 3. When it leaned toward 7, I woke with my heart doing calisthenics in my throat. The text from Aunt came at 10:06 a.m. Come back when you can. Daytime got hands. That's the thing about horror. Day makes night feel like a story the night told to feel big. But sometimes the day listens and takes notes. At Holloway's, the day crew moved like bees who trained on ballet. They're the people who make grief look like a room with chairs. Loretta, who runs the front, hugged me with a seriousness that made my ribs behave. You the nephew, she said. You got the voice. I heard the building went soft like butter under your breath. I had help, I said, and butter is a team player. She laughed exactly once like a bell. then got back to making death appointments feel like brunch reservations. The business of heartbreak needs receptionists. Everybody knows that, and nobody thanks them enough. Aunt looked like she'd been hit by Wednesday and kept walking. They slept, she said, meaning the drawers. But the phones. People calling. People stopping by. She corrected. Old men asking if we sell sleeping jars. Ladies wanting to leave quilts with names stitched in. One boy, couldn't be more than 10, brought me a metronome from his piano class and said, "Can you make this tick to the right number so my granddad remembers?" I took it. I set it to 3. He nodded like we'd signed a treaty and left. "Is it working?" I asked. "Define working," she said. "Nobody's standing on the porch asking to count the steps." "Good bar," I said. Then she frowned toward the far door, the one to the garage. I followed her gaze. The side door looked ordinary. Gray paint, a scuff where a gurney had brushed it, a sign with hours and big friendliness. But the air around it had the tightness of a throat about to cough. "He's polite," Aunt said, "but he's persistent." "Mr. Ransom?" "Or the lesson he brought with him," she said. "I can't tell the difference." The radio, which we hadn't turned off, cleared its static like a singer preparing the note that ends the argument. It said, in a voice that was everybody's, "If the living refuse to sleep, the dead will remind them how." I wanted to argue with a radio for the first time in my life. "We don't refuse," I said. "We forget." "Same thing," the radio said. "Rude," I told it, and Aunt shot me a look that meant respect to the appliance. We made a plan for the day. Pastor would return at noon with a few church mothers who could hum a brick wall to tears. Coach would bring a photo of his father and a recording from 3 Christmases ago of Mr. Ransom telling the story about the time a goose chased him down Old Pike because he'd parked too close to the pond. Tiana would wrangle paperwork because that's how she prays, putting forms in order until the universe nods. "You," Aunt said, "you're going to teach us your lab tricks." I gathered folks in the chapel where we could spread out without intimidating the drawers. "You don't have to be a hypnotist," I said. "Just a metronome with manners. The body likes patterns. It will follow." I taught them a breath I invented years ago for a retired boxer who could only sleep if he imagined himself walking home on a road where the streetlights winked in an exact order. I taught them a visualization where you wrap the room in a blanket from the ceiling down to the baseboards. I taught them the 4 square, the body scan, and the "you can put it down," which is not a technique so much as a permission slip. They practiced on each other until the room exhaled from the hilarity of watching Miss Thelma try to perform a body scan on Andre and getting stuck at "your knees," which I suspect are liars, sir. Around 1, the radio changed stations. Not literally, but the static thinned to a band of whispers precisely between AM and FM. If you tilted your head, you could hear 100 unnamed people saying thank you, like a wind across wheat. I pressed my palms together like prayer and said, "Please let this hold." The side door knocked once, polite as good shoes on tile. And then, because stories need to escalate, the front door opened by itself. Loretta shrieked, not because she's delicate, but because boundaries matter. We turned. The door eased wider, and in walked a woman in a yellow dress with eyes the color of sleep. She was very clearly alive. Her black hair fell in a sheet to her shoulders. She held a box like a cake carrier, but through the plastic lid I saw a metronome. "Can I help you?" Loretta asked, already helping with her whole body. "I'm Renee Ransom," the woman said, voice hoarse like she'd been crying in a polite room. "Ezekiel's wife." I brought his metronome. Maybe he'll recognize the sound of home. We all looked at each other like children who found the answer key on the teacher's desk. Grateful and a little ashamed. "Bring it," Aunt said, and opened the way to the prep room like a magician inviting you backstage. The metronome was old, oak, with a notch worn where a thumb rests to steady it. Renee set it on the counter. "He used it to teach the boys in youth choir how to feel the count under the song," she said, eyes wet but steady. "Said if you can't feel it, you're just making noise." "May I?" I asked, gesturing to the pendulum. "Please," she said. I set it swinging and adjusted the weight to a tempo that matched the room's heartbeat. Slow, forgiving. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The radio softened to make room. The drawers, each of them, loosened like muscles after a day of good work. "Mr. Ransom," I said. And it felt like calling a friend's father who always made sure you got a plate at the barbecue. "Sir, your wife brought the count home. You can rest now without thinking somebody's going to miss a cue." Tick, tock. "Jordan," Tiana whispered, very close, and I realized her hand had found my sleeve. She pointed at the far corner, where the wall met the ceiling. There, in the light that wasn't light, hung a number like a shadow. 7. It wasn't painted. It wasn't dust. It was there the way an inside joke lives in a family, present and earned. I blinked. The 7 faded a shade, as if winking. "Is that good?" Aunt asked. "Yes," I said, and surprised myself by believing it. 7 is start over, or put down, or put to bed. Renee pressed folded fingers to her mouth and made the smallest sound. "Zeke," she said, 100 stories in 2 syllables. We stood, 6 bodies breathing like a choir nobody paid to rehearse. The metronome kept time. The radio hummed, and just when the room felt like a held baby finally falling asleep, the sighed. Door knocked again, this time in a different rhythm. 3, 2, 1, like someone counting down instead of up. "Who is that?" Loretta asked, offended on the building's behalf. "Maybe not who," Pastor said. "Maybe what's next." Tick, tock. I took a step toward the door. "Don't," Aunt said sharply. "Not yet." I wasn't going to open it. I was going to talk to it. That was the trick, wasn't it? Politeness as ritual, boundaries as lullaby. I set my palm against the wood again, warm like a forehead. "We hear you," I said. "But this door belongs today. Night has its own entrance. You know that." The knock stopped. The metronome continued. The 7 on the ceiling faded another shade, not gone, but archived. We listened harder than I thought human ears could. After a long moment, Renee whispered, "Thank you." It landed on the counter like a quarter toward a bus ride she'd paid for 1,000 times. When evening came, Fulton Park carried itself like a person who survived something and cooked anyway. The bodega put out plantains that glowed like reason to be alive. Kids hollered with that specific summer authority of youth. An old man watered the sidewalk out front of his stoop for no reason except habit. And in the funeral home, the dead slept. We kept the metronome running. We took turns sitting with it like a candle you don't let blow out. Around 10, Coach returned with a boombox and a CD labeled Zeke's Stories 2003 to 2017 in Sharpie. We played track 3, The Goose Story. Mr. Ransom's voice filled the prep room like a porch on a good afternoon, and I swear the drawers leaned in. Man walked into a goose's house like he paid rent, his recorded self said, and everyone in the room snorted. We let ourselves laugh, not too loud, not too long, 2 or 3 times, then back to the business of remembering we're mortal. Near midnight, Pastor gathered us, living and not, in a circle. She had us lay hands, not on the drawers, we're not reckless, but on the counter, on the walls, on the door, on the metronome, and on each other. She said, "It's not complicated. It's a lullaby. Do your part." We did. We hummed. We breathed. We counted without letting it become math. And at exactly 3:13 a.m., the radio said, in a voice that was my mother's and Mr. Ransom's and my own and nobody's, "Go to bed." We obeyed, those of us who could. Some slept in chairs, some on pews. I sat cross-legged on the prep room floor with my back against the cabinet and my head tipped like a question mark and dozed the dumb doze of a man who found the off switch by accident. I woke to the metronome still ticking and the sun making stained glass behave like it should. In the days that followed, Fulton Park talked about that night the way communities talk about a storm, factual and superstitious at once. Folks said, "Remember?" and "Okay, but for real," and "You heard what I heard?" and then, The papers didn't write it up. The city didn't send alerts about ghosts. But the funeral homes were full of flowers for weeks, and people apologized to their dead aloud before sleeping. And the barbershop instituted a rule where you had to say one good thing about someone who'd passed before you could talk mess. Coach brought donuts every Friday to Holloway's and sat in the chapel for a few minutes with his head bowed, as if he were listening to a radio only he could hear. Renee kept the metronome on her dresser and let it tick half an hour each night while she brushed her teeth and set out her clothes and wrote Zeke a note in a notebook he couldn't read. "It helps," she told us. Not him. Me. Tiana and I became the kind of friends who'd text you awake at 2 a.m. and mean, "Do you need to be? Or can I sing you down with a list of vegetables in alphabetical order because that's what my grandmother did for me?" We walked at odd hours and sometimes touched shoulders without having to say anything about it. One afternoon we sat on her stoop and she said, "You still hear things?" "Less," I said. "But when I do, they're friendly." "You think it'll happen again?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Because we'll forget again. That's what we do. But maybe we'll forget less." She nodded. That's the most human sentence I ever heard. We laughed once or twice, because you have to. The last time I saw Mr. Ransom, felt him really, was on a Tuesday, a month after the night the dead couldn't sleep. I was in the back of a city bus, because sometimes I ride them for comfort. There's something holy about a vehicle that knows where it's going. The driver was a woman with braids and a jaw that said, "Try me." The bus was half empty. The AC tried its best. A baby cried 2 rows up in that full-body way babies have when they're tired of being small. I closed my eyes and counted breaths for the baby because it makes me feel useful. In, 2, 3, hold. Out, 2, 3, 4. The baby didn't stop because baby's not part of your personal movie. But the cry moved a shade toward a key that hurts less. I felt, just for a second, a shape sit beside me. Not heavy, real enough. Smelled like aftershave and bus vinyl and the kind of sweat a man earns. 1, 2, 3, he tapped. Not on his knee this time, but on the metal bar under the window. Soft, so only I heard. 7, he didn't tap. He didn't need to. I knew it, and he knew I knew. Thank you, I said to the window. The baby hiccuped and fell asleep mid-complaint, the way only the honest can. The driver caught my gaze in the rearview mirror and nodded once like we'd both witnessed a small, correct miracle. In the funeral home that night, Aunt turned the radio off for once, and we let the building hum itself. We stood in the prep room and listened to the kind of quiet you earn. "Tell me a joke," she said suddenly, like she'd changed her mind about rules. I thought, okay, but just one. I cleared my throat. How you gonna haunt me when you still owe me $20? She rolled her eyes so hard it dusted the corners. You always do too much, she said. But she smiled in the way that makes mourning easier. The drawers stayed still. The metronome on Renee's dresser ticked it home. And somewhere in the city, a boy named Ezra dreamed of a hallway with a counter at the end and said, "Not tonight." And the counter agreed. I walked outside under a sky that looked like the city had washed its face. The moon hung there, humane. I breathed in, I breathed out, and I let the night be not a test, but a room I could lie down in. The dead can't sleep. Aunt had said that first night. Maybe that's true sometimes, but maybe sometimes what they really mean is you can. And maybe what we owe our dead is to take that permission like medicine, to count not to 7, but to us. I went home and left all my mirrors uncovered. I poured a glass of water and did not apologize to the faucet for hoping. I lay down under my mother's blanket and said, "Okay, Ma." The city hummed. The world counted. And for once, on purpose, I slept.
Thank you for listening to The Storyteller's Moon. If this story touched you, scared you, or kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps the stories alive, and I can't wait to share the next one with you under the moonlight. Until then, may your nights be safe and your dreams unforgettable.